Mhm.
Okay, I just started the recording. So we'll wait about 3 or 4 minutes before we get started.
Okay. So when you are you going to go through and do an editing and take bad pauses and all the andums and or that's that get thrown in there? Are you going to clean that up, or do I need to try to do this good the first time?
You better do it good the first time because I'm not a techie.
This is going to be pretty different because usually I ask questions and ask people to raise their hands to see what kind of information the audience already has. I can't see hands this time. I can see some background behind Jake. That's pretty good looking background behind you there, Jake.
Yeah, that's the Badlands in North Dakota.
Is that right outside your window, I'm sure?
And yeah, right. Jerry, I'm just down the road from you in Fargo, so.
Well, my wife and I did go out to Medora this summer.
Well.
And the folks out there were doing a pretty good job about keeping space.
That's good.
When we were at the music, 2 empty chairs to my left, the row in front of us was empty, so they were doing a pretty good job about keeping space.
That's great.
See, we could ask everybody else that's been to Medora, raise your hand. Can you see them all? Nope. Oh, Kylie's hand went up. Anytime you're ready, Cheryl, we'll quit goofing around here and we can start going.
We'll give it about 2 minutes. We're right at 1:30 right now, so there's quite a few people signing in right now.
Okay. We will either wait patiently or impatiently, but we will wait.
Uh-oh. Huh.
Okay, Kylie, I think we can go ahead and get started.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. We're so glad that you can be here with us doing these Zoom training. First off today, we have Jerry Christensen from Freedom Resource Center. Before he gets started, just a couple things. We ask that you keep your microphones muted and your videos off. There will be a couple places during his presentation that we will stop and ask for questions. So if you do have a question, just type it in the chat box and I will be on the lookout for those questions to relay back to Jerry. So on that note, Jerry, it's all yours.
Oh, these poor people, they have to listen to me, but we'll give it our best shot. So there's the title of this presentation, Service Support Therapy Animal and Who's Who. And here are a couple important questions that you need to ask anytime to go to a presentation. Who is this person and where are they from? Freedom Resource Center is a center for independent living. Our catchment area is the southeast corner of North Dakota and 11 counties in Minnesota. Options in East Grand Forks has got the northeast corner of North Dakota, and I'm not sure how much they've got of Minnesota. In Minot, we have Independence. Bismarck, we've got Options. And all of us Centers for Independent Living, our goal is to help people with any disability live as independently as they possibly can. Freedom has been around since 1989, which is a year before the ADA was signed into law. On the opening slide, you saw that my title is Accessibility Specialist. That means that I'm supposed to know what the ADA requires as far as accessible features. And then that kind of morphed into, I needed to find out some of the things that fair housing required when questions came up about housing issues and are apartments accessible or not. And that's another big can of worms there, another 3-day thing. And the third question is, what does it have to do with this group? If we were live, this would be a time when I'd ask, raise your hand if you're a landlord. Raise your hand if you're a tenant. Raise your hand if you're some sort of a service provider. And we'd look around the room and we'd see who's who. For some reason, all of you folks have got some interest in knowing about service animals, therapy animals, emotional support animals, and how do they fit in housing. And that's going to be our focus today. I'm going to start out with a little quiz. You can write your own answers down. I will guarantee you that at least one of those answers is correct. And what we've got here is a picture of a vest that would go on an animal. And on the vest, it says service cat. The question is, what does it tell you? The answers: A, nothing. B, the owner needs training. C, the cat is highly trained. D, the cat has ADA protection. We'll come back to these at the end. No, it will not be graded. It isn't one of those deals that pass or fail. So if you got your answers recorded, again, I'd look around the room and see if you had them recorded. We'll go on to the next multiple choice question. Here's a picture of a dog. Dog has got a vest on. It says service dog. What does this tell you? Answers are A, nothing. B, the owner bought a vest for the dog. C, the dog is highly trained. D, the dog has ADA protection. Choose all you think are correct. I will guarantee you that in my mind, there's at least one that is correct. That's enough time. Third question, pick a dog wearing a vest. It's difficult to read that one, but that has got the printing emotional support animal. What tell you? Choices: A, nothing. B, the vest for the dog. C, the dog is highly trained. And D, the dog has ADA protection. We'll assume that you got your answers in already, and we'll move along here. Like I said, we will come back to these at the end, and I'll tell you the answers that I think are correct. We're going to start out with just a little brief difference between the ADA and fair housing. Certainly, we are not going to cover every aspect of the ADA. The ADA applies to the job site. This is called Title I, and here the ADA describes employee and employer rights and responsibilities. There's another part called Title II, which talks about the accessibility requirements for state and local government. A third part called Title III is the accessibility requirements for places of public accommodation. That's any place that needs the public to come in to do business. Restaurants, hotels, gas stations, doctor's offices, anything. One of the things that does not fall under the ADA is federal government. That's because that falls under the Architectural Barriers Act, the ABA, which was signed into law in 1968, some 22 years before the ADA. Now, there's certainly more to the ADA than these three, but this is just a little differentiation between ADA and fair housing. Fair housing, again, this is not all inclusive, talks about tenant and landlord rights and responsibilities. Things such as requesting a reasonable accommodation, a reasonable modification would fall under here. It talks about housing design. There are some parts of apartment buildings that need to fit the ADA accessibility requirements. Once you get in the actual apartment itself, there's not everything there needs to meet ADA requirements. This is worthy of study, but it's not in our scope for today. And fair housing deals with emotional support animals, which is our focus for the day. And next, we're going to just separate a little bit between these three types of animals: service animals, emotional support animals, therapy animals. So a service animal, and that's the definition, it comes right out of the ADA, a dog or miniature horse that has been trained to do a task for a person with a disability. And there we have a picture of a dog, and we have a picture of a miniature horse that's got a harness on it. Just a little service animal information to follow up. They may be in public areas. If you've got a service dog, you may take that service dog into a restaurant. You may take that dog up to the buffet line in that restaurant. No, you should not take that dog into the kitchen because that's not the public area. The animal can be in the public areas, but it does have to be under the owner's control and care. It's not up to the restaurant to feed your animal, not at all. And it's got to be housebroken. And following right up with that housebroken, if the pooch poops, it's out. If that animal is being disruptive, is interfering with other people's enjoyment of whatever they're there for, the animal can be asked to be removed. The person is welcome to come back. An example of that, someone comes into the theater, they've got their service dog, and the dog is busy barking, barking, barking. That's being pretty much a nuisance. The animal can be asked to leave, but the person that owns the animal should be welcomed back in without the animal. And there are two questions that you can ask someone about a service animal. Is that a service animal for a person with a disability? And the person with the disability has got to be the person with the animal. If I can't go into a restaurant with my wife's service animal without my wife. She doesn't have one, that's just an example. And then you can ask, tasks, does that animal do person? But you can only ask these if disability and the need are not readily apparent. We're going to talk a little bit more about this with an example or two. How's that different from an emotional animal? A service animal falls under the A. Emotional support animals fall under fair housing. Here is the definition for an emotional support animal from the fair housing. A companion animal, then they've got pet in parentheses, that a medical professional provides benefit for a person, mental health condition, or emotional disorder. Not a very big difference. Service animal has to do a task. Emotional support animal provides some benefit. Could it be a task? It doesn't have to be a task. And got a picture of a cat and a snake. Yes, emotional support animals can be just about anything. Likewise with the emotional support animal, they need to be under the owner's care and control. If somebody's got their emotional dog in their apartment, open up, and that dog goes tearing down the hallway and knocks Mrs. Johnson over, that animal's not under the owner's control and care. Got to be under the owner's control and care. The care part, that means the owner's got to feed it, the owner's got to clean up after it. What if the owner isn't able to clean up after it because of their physical limitations? Then it's the owner's responsibility to find someone, hire someone, whatever it takes to do the cleanup. No additional pet deposit can be collected for an emotional support animal. That's also the same for a service animal coming into an apartment building. You cannot ask for more deposit because of the animal. However, just like anything other damages that a person's responsible for in an apartment, if the animal causes damage, the owner is responsible to pay for the damages. You can charge for those. An emotional support animal is seen as a reasonable accommodation under the Fair Housing Act. In fair housing, a reasonable accommodation is a change in the rules, such as you've got a no-pet apartment. I ask for a reasonable accommodation. May I bring my emotional support animal? May I bring my service animal in? A reasonable modification is a change to the structure. And an example of that would be, I'd like to add a grab bar by my toilet. Modification is a change in the building. Accommodation, a change in the rules. And the third type of animal is on the title slide, is a therapy animal. And here comes a definition. I try not to have a lot of big sentences, but here's another one. Animal that might be trained to provide affection, comfort, and love to people in hospitals, retirement and nursing homes, schools. Defined, but notice this, not covered or protected under the Fair Federal Housing Act or the American with Disabilities Acts. A therapy animal is an animal that I would own. I take that animal into one of these different locations to bring comfort to other people. I own the animal, but it doesn't do things for me. Service animal, emotional support animal, I own the animal, it does something for me. Kylie, have we had any questions come in?
We have one.
Let's give it a shot.
What ADA law applies to sober living environments or treatment services, such as sober housing where people live short or long term?
I'm going to have to look at that a little closer. That might be similar to the ADA discussion about college dormitories and things of that nature. Offhand, I don't know scripture and verse. If that person sends me an email, I'll answer. I'll see if I can find a better answer for that question later on. My email address will be coming in a slide way toward the end.
Okay.
Does that seem like a fair enough answer?
For now, yes.
Okay, at least nobody can throw rocks at us here. Okay, nothing else right now?
What one just came in? Will any of these cute animals be making an appearance today?
No, I do not. We do not have any live animals in our office, although there was a picture of a cat, and there's a cat that looks an awful lot like that, and I live in the house that that cat owns. That's another story, but not for now.
One more question came in. Can an ESA animal be in amenity areas such as the pool, like service animals?
That is a very good question. We'll be coming up to that in a couple slides.
And does this apply to private owners as well?
Now, private owners in your own private home, this doesn't apply at all. This is for in apartment buildings. If it's a fourplex or smaller, and if the owner is one of the tenants, it doesn't apply. Anything bigger than that, it applies. Maybe I'm not understanding the question correctly.
Let's see. Does this apply to private owners as well that are renting to others?
I think that I kind of answered that. The fair housing applies to apartment buildings, but there's an exception for small ones. If it's a fourplex or smaller, I'm going to stop there. If it's a fourplex, and if the owner is living in one of the units, fair housing doesn't apply, so they wouldn't have to abide by this. If it's bigger than a fourplex, fair housing applies. And if we've got some folks from High Plains Fair Housing, if I didn't get that right, I hope they'll chime in on the chat and give a better answer.
One more question. What about homeless shelters where normally animals are not allowed?
I think homeless shelters fall under this. Again, I'm pretty sure they do. Before I give a definite answer, I would want to look more carefully at that. And again, High Plains Fair Housing. If you're listening, if you can chime in anytime and get good answers, I would appreciate that. Are we ready, Kylie?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I forgot. See, there's a picture of a horse with a serviceman showing that therapy animal. Certainly, very, very valuable animal to help people through some difficult times. Not part of this conversation. We will not be talking about therapy animals anymore. So here's just a little review summary, and it's either yes or no. So under the two columns above, we got service and support, ADA rights. Do service animals have ADA rights? Yes or no? Do emotional support animals have ADA rights? Yes or no? Long enough. Yep, service animals have got ADA rights, but support animals do not have ADA rights. What about housing? Do service animals have rights under fair housing? And do support animals? Yes to both of those. What about in public places? And when I show these answers, you're going to say unfair. You said it was yes or no, and I tossed in a maybe under support animals. Little example. Let's suppose there's a person that's coming into the apartment complex office, and they're going to check into renting an office. And they have an emotional support cat. Should they just wander in with their emotional support cat? No, they shouldn't, because it doesn't have ADA rights. And that office, that's a place of public accommodation. Could the person call ahead of time and explain that I get pretty nervous when I'm trying to rent an apartment. I have an emotional support cat. Would it be okay if I brought my emotional support cat? And at that point, the people in charge of that office could say, yes, you may bring your emotional support cat in. What if the people in the office would say no? Then the person that's coming in and asks the question should respect that and should leave their cat somewhere else. Dog. Can a dog be a service animal? Can a dog be an emotional support animal? Yes to both. What about a cat? Nope. Cat cannot be a service animal, but it can be an emotional support animal. Here's a big question that a lot of landlords have. Do we need to allow an animal into our no pet apartment? We've got to look at this from 2 points of view. We've got to look at it, is it a service animal under the ADA? In just a couple of seconds, we'll talk about emotional support animal. Well, we've got to fall back to those 2 questions. Does the person have a disability? And does the animal do a task or tasks that serve the disability? If the answer to both of those questions are yes, you have to allow that dog or miniature horse into your apartment building. What if the answer to one of those 2 questions is no? In that case, that is not a service animal, and you may not have to allow it in the building. Notice I said may, because if it's a dog, it could be an emotional support animal, so we'll have to take a look at those questions. So now we'll take a look at emotional support animal coming into housing. Do we need to allow that animal into our net no pet apartment? And notice the evil cat down in the corner. A cat that looks a lot like that one owns the house I live in. So the first question is the same. Does the person have a disability? And the second question is just a hair different. Does the animal benefit the person with the disability? A service animal, dog or miniature horse, person has to have a disability. The animal has to perform some task that serves the disability. We're going to have an example or 2 of that coming up. Emotional support animal can be just about any type of an animal. Person has to have a disability. Animal has to do some benefit that will for the person with the disability. Now, because these 2 are so similar, housing, and because the questions are so similar, fair housing often doesn't differentiate between the 2, and they just call them assistance animals. And I'm going to try to use that term assistance animal through the rest of this, unless there's a time when it is definitely an ADA question and it would be a service animal. We'll see how well I do at that. Maybe we should back up. Any new questions so far, Kylie?
Yes, a couple.
Okay.
Are you allowed to ask what the disability is and or ask how the animal benefits the person?
You have to be very careful asking about the disability. That should just be asked as a yes or no question. Does this animal serve a person with a disability? Don't ask about the disability. And yes, you can ask the benefit. We'll talk a little bit about that. I've got an example of a sample. Boy, that's awful. I have a sample letter coming up a little later on that may help answer that question. Did I answer that one fairly well? Was there another question?
There's one more. Can you have an emotional support animal and a service animal?
Yes. And a person may have more than one of either animal. A person could have a couple emotional support animals. Unfortunately, I think sometimes people abuse the system. In many cases, my heart goes out to landlords because I think there are some people that are very much abusing the system. I don't have a good idea for a fix.
Okay, there's a couple more that came in.
Okay.
Do workforce housing camps fall under fair housing as they function more like hotels?
Oh, man. We're going to call that an RGQ. That's a 3-letter acronym for a real good question. Repeat that for me.
Do workforce housing camps fall under fair housing as they function more like hotels? I
don't have a good answer for that question. That's going to take a little more research. Going to have to come back to that one, maybe via email later.
Okay. The next one, can you require them to carry apartment insurance for a service pet or a companion animal as a rider on their apartment insurance?
These people have good questions, Kylie. Where did you find them? We're talking about a no pet apartment. I don't know the answer to that. So we're going to have to look at that. If you're talking about an animal coming into a pets or welcome apartment, and if you required everybody else to have maybe on a service or an emotional support animal, but I'm not sure the answer to that. I don't want to go there. That needs more research. Good
Okay.
crowd.
One more. Can the number of support animals be limited by city ordinances?
Golly, another good question. I think the answer is no. I know for a fact that breeds of animals cannot be excluded by city ordinance. Just because you think golden retrievers are evil doesn't mean that you can exclude them. Yeah, I know I picked on a nice dog.
Then one more. Do renters need a letter from a doctor for either an emotional service animal?
I like that question. The answer is coming in a few slides.
Okay. Oh, one more. Does the breed specifics pertain to both ESA and service animals?
Yes.
Okay, that is it for now.
We'll move on quickly before somebody else sends in a good question. Seriously, thank you for those questions. Those are good questions. And while I'm supposed to know these answers, as you can tell, I don't know them all. Thank you for asking. Circling back here a little bit to re-emphasize this, what questions can a landlord ask? And we're kind of breaking it up a little bit here. If the disability is apparent or known, see, that's coming back to these two questions. You can ask, is this for a person with a disability? And what task or benefit? So if the disability is apparent or known, and here I've got a picture of a person who, you got the white cane for walking and the guide dog. If the disability is apparent or known, and if the need is apparent or known, if you see someone coming in a case like this, that little diagram there, can you tell there's a disability? Yes, you can. Can you see what the need is? Can you see the task? Yes, you can. So what questions can you ask? I like this answer. None. You can't ask any questions. If you know the disability and you know the need, the service, you can't ask any. Well, what if you can see the disability, but the need is not apparent? And somebody might be asking, what kind of a situation would this be? Let's suppose a person comes into your apartment rental office. They wheel in a wheelchair, and they're above the knee amputee on one side, and there's a dog in their lap. Can you see that there's a disability? Sure can. Is the need for that animal apparent or known? Sure isn't. Can you ask the person if they have a disability? No, because you can see that. Can you ask, is that an assistance animal? You bet you can ask if that's assistance animal, because you can't tell what it does. May you ask, what does it do? Yes, you can ask, what does it do? So here's a case where I can see the disability. I can't tell what the need is. I can ask, what task or what benefit does this animal do or provide? If the person says, anytime I drop a pencil on the floor, I say, Fido, fetch, he brings a pencil right back to me. That's looking like a service animal to me because it's doing a task, picking things up off the floor. If the person, wheelchair with amputee, says, my animal helps comfort me when I get stressed out. That's sounding more like an emotional support animal. And that would be a, yep, you can come in. What if it was a cat on the person's lap? Well, certainly not a service animal. Could it be an emotional support animal? Could be. And you can ask, what task does it do? What about if the disability is not apparent or known? And there's a picture of a cat on the side, and the guy's got an awful look on his face. And that picture has nothing to do with the presentation, except I thought maybe you'd like that. Did that come from some movie? Don't know. But if the disability is not apparent or known, there's no way that you can know what the animal does. So then you can ask the question, does that animal serve a person with a disability? If it's a yes, then you need to go on to a second question. What task, what benefit does the animal do? What if the answer for the first question would have been a no? Does that animal serve a person with a disability? No, I don't have a disability. Then it's a pet. Do you have to allow it to come in that case? Do not. Do you even have to go on to the second question? Do not. Before we go on to that, any more questions come in, Kylie? I'm stopping a lot more often than I said, aren't I?
Nope, no question, no new questions.
Okay. And here we coming to a question that someone asked, the accommodation and the relationship, who can provide that document? And there's a list that I found: physician, psychiatrist, social worker, mental health professional. When I gave a similar talk about a year ago, I believe that someone from the High Plains Fair Housing said that a clergyman, someone in a trusted position, they're getting pretty wide open, isn't it? And here's that sample letter. There is no form letter from Fair Housing. Here's a sample. Joe Smith is a patient who's been under my care since May of 2012. I have firsthand knowledge of Joe's disability and the limitations caused by his disability. Due to Joe's disability, I am prescribing an emotional support cat to assist Joe with manage his stress. I will be happy to answer any questions you may have regarding my recommendation that Joe have an emotional support cat. Of course, this should come with all of the other parts of a business letter. Should have a letterhead. Hope it would have a letterhead. Return address, contact information. Yes, you may contact the person who wrote the letter. You may do that. Kylie, anything yet?
One question. If a person has 3 dogs in a public place, do they have to tell you what tasks each dog does?
Thinking for a second, I believe the answer would be yes. Because if there's only one dog that's doing a task, the other 2 are pets and not necessarily welcomed. I think the answer to that is yeah. Yeah, this is my dog that retrieves stuff that I drop. This is my dog that does, yeah, I think so. Yep, we'll go with yes. Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Oh, good. We must have put them all to sleep. Bad humor. Can you deny an animal if somebody comes? Yes, if. We spent a little time talking about that disability and benefit criteria. There are 2 questions. Does this animal serve a person with a disability? And what does it do for the person? Both of those questions have to be answered yes. If one of them is a no, the animal is a pet and you do not have to allow it in your building. Or the animal, and notice that I highlighted the. It's got to be that particular animal that poses a direct threat to the health or safety of other people in the building. just a little bit ago, I said, you know, you can't just say that golden retrievers are evil, evil animals, and therefore we won't allow them in. We'll go to pit bull because that's one that the question is. You can't say, I don't allow pit bulls in. You've got to be able to say, that particular pit bull that you want to bring in here is a direct threat to the health or safety of others in my building. Or the animal would damage the property or others. And again, it's got to be that animal. You can't just say golden retrievers are evil and they all damage property. And a little more that goes on with that, and that those threats and damage could not be reduced or eliminated by another reasonable accommodation. Wow. You can deny the animal. You need to know on what grounds. And if you're a person who has an animal, you need to understand that yes, your animal can be denied on some of these grounds. In the apartment building itself, do service animals have rights? When and where? Do ESA animals have rights? When and where? Excuse me. Certainly, the apartment, both animals and emotional support animals, rights. They can be in the apartment. In any tenant-only areas, tenant-only areas, tenant-only, what does that mean? Is the hallway a tenant-only area? Not necessarily. If your apartment building has a game room, could the game room be a tenant-only area? Could be. Could the game room be a public area? Could it be a place that anybody could come and watch TV? You bet. So now we're separating a little bit between tenant-only areas and public areas. The service animal has got rights in both the tenant areas and the public areas. Whoops, got too quick there with my finger, I'm sorry. But the emotional support animal does not necessarily have rights in the public areas. So if you've got a game room and anybody can come off the street, walk in and shoot pool with the tenants, that's a public area. Emotional support animals do not automatically have rights out there, shouldn't be out there. Could the apartment management say, you are welcome to bring your emotional support animals up areas? Could. Do tenants just automatically assume?
Okay, we have about six questions.
Holy cats. Let's stop right here and let's go back to them then. Thank you, Kylie.
Next one. Can you require a plan for the animal if there is emergency or person starts drinking / doing drugs and is not taking care of the animal? Like where the pet can go when the person is hospitalized for mental health care or addiction treatment.
Gosh, where do these people get these good questions? You know, I've not even considered that one. I don't have an idea. I think the pet owner would be very wise to have a plan, but I don't know if that can be required. I have more work to do, don't I?
I think so. Next question, just to be clear, if bully breeds aren't allowed in city limits, but is an ESA, we would have it.
The bully breed not being allowed in city limits, if it's an ESA or service animal, that trumps the city limits thing, and bully breeds can be in the city.
Okay. Next one, what should a landlord do if they suspect the doctor's note is fake or purchased on the internet?
This is one of those cases where my heart goes out to the landlord. I don't have a good answer for that, and this is one of those cases that I see as just If you think the dog, I think I'm going to refer that question to our good High Plains Fair. I think I can doubt, didn't I? These are good questions, people. Very good questions.
I got 3 more. Who decides if the animal is under control?
I think that would be something that if the landlord has got first-hand knowledge, perhaps cleaning staff is in the hallway and the dog comes tearing out of apartment 104, runs down the hall, that's not under control. That's first-hand knowledge. Document that. This is going to get mentioned a little bit later. If you've got a bunch of your other tenants are complaining about this dog that's out running around, or cat or snake that's slithering down the hallway, document it. Get pictures, document it. I think board could do that if they've got other tenants complaining. I think that would help.
Okay. If an animal passes away, do they need to get a new letter?
I believe the answer is no, because the need for the ESA is still there. In my humble opinion, I would hope that the tenant would be in contact with their landlord and talk to them about that. But I believe the answer is no, they do not need to get a new letter. This is different from the air carriers, so don't cross over to that.
And the last one right now, can a landlord request a picture of the animal for their files to make sure it's the same animal?
You people are asking such good questions. I got to write that one down as an I don't know. Are you keeping track? You've got track of all these questions. You got to get those to me. I'm going to do some research.
And I'm highlighting the ones that you have to do research on.
Okay.
One more came in. So you can replace an animal on an ESA letter if one passes away?
I believe the answer to that is yes, because the need for the support is still there. I believe the answer is yes. And again, I've heard about using this where they got a letter for an animal and all of a sudden the landlord comes by and a dog, there are now 4 dogs and 3 cats, and some drawn a line through one part of the written in some more. Are we good to move on now, Kylie?
Yes.
Okay. A little bit of a recap. You people are probably hooray, hooray, because recap means we're getting close to the end. Any type of an animal in a no pet apartment is a reasonable accommodation. In my humble opinion, the reasonable accommodation should be before the animal shows up. I think my personal opinion, someone getting an animal and then saying to you, oh, I'm going to get a letter from my doctor. I think that's dirty pool. It should be the other way around. Something that did not get mentioned before, if shots and license are required by the city or the county or whatever, your ESA, your service animal, assistance animal, needs to have those shots and license if it's required for all other animals. This is a biggie. Care and control. The owner of any assistance animal is responsible for the care and control. If you've got a spot in the yard that this is where you are supposed to take your dog for it to poop, that's the owner's responsibility. Some earlier, what if the owner can't do it? Then it's up to the owner to hire somebody, find a friend, whatever, to take the dog out there. There's an apartment complex in Fargo. They are a pet allowed complex, And if you bring your dog in, you have to provide a DNA sample for your dog at your expense. If they find dog poop out in the yard, they do a DNA check on that dog poop. If that's your dog, guess who gets knocked on their rent? Can that apply to someone, a service animal or an assistance animal? Yep, because that's across the board. They're not single, just one animal. We've already talked about that control thing, several care and control. Can't emphasize that enough. The animals cannot just roam through the entire building. They've got rights inside the apartment, but not necessarily in the hallway. When you take your emotional support dog down the hallway, or you bring your cat out to go to the vet, that's got to be on a leash or tether. Here's something right out of the ADA. A service animal must be leashed or tethered unless such leash or tether would interfere with the task that the animal does. But even in that case, the dog somehow has to be under the owner's control by verbal or some kind of command. And that assistance animal can be denied. We've talked about that. Can be asked to leave. Talked a little bit about that. There are some other things. And I don't think that this can be emphasized enough. Documentation. If you're a tenant and you're thinking about getting an emotional support animal or a service animal, get some documentation that shows that you have a need. Remember, these assistance animals are for people with disabilities, and the animal has to somehow benefit that disability. Landlords, if you've got a tenant and their dog is not under their care and control, you can ask that animal, the animal's got to go. And here again, I don't think you can emphasize enough, document. Say that on this day, the animal ran down the hall, ran over Mrs. Johnson, the animal pooped all over the hallway, the animal peed in the corner, whatever. Document it. Kylie, any more?
Yes, a few. So kind of go along with what I missed this one earlier. If a tenant has a service or ESA and the need is clear, but the animal is causing issues or damages, can you still require the tenant to remove it?
Yes, I think that's coming right under that care and control.
Okay.
And again, document.
And then, let's see. Can the landlord require copies of the shot record of the animal to make sure the vaccines are up to date?
Gosh, these people ask good questions. I think that would be a yes, but I'm not positive. Highlight that one, Kylie.
Okay. Next one. Can a landlord require a provider to fill out their own paperwork rather than just accepting an existing letter?
No. Reasonable accommodation or modification requests may be done orally. Excuse me, I'm reading my mouth here and I'm about out of water. They may be done orally. There is no form letter for either one of these. My humble opinion, documentation is better. This is a case where if you are the tenant and you know you need help with this, go find your Center for Independent Living, get hooked up with an advocate, somewhere that could help you put this information together. Did I answer that question or did I just skirt around it?
I guess they haven't replied. So we'll just go with that for now. Next question, can a shot collar be considered as a leash or a restraint?
You people ask good questions. I think they'd have to be able to demonstrate. If they just put the shock collar on, but the animal is still just misbehaving all over the place. Maybe they're not even pushing the button, who knows? I think you have to come back and look at the actions of the animal. Is the animal under the owner's control? If the owner says come and the dog just keeps wandering away for the next 15 minutes, that doesn't sound like control to me. I think you have to look at the actions. You folks are asking good questions.
Okay, next one. If we feel the ESA has been abandoned or left alone, can we report to animal control to have it removed?
I believe you could report that to animal control, and what they do. Yeah, I'd just say report it to animal control and see what they do. And hopefully if it's an abandoned animal, they're going to do something.
Okay, the last one right now. How does charging for a DNA test for dog poo affect the not being able to charge for deposit or extra charges?
I think they were able to do that because they were requiring that of anybody that brings a dog in. They weren't just singling out someone with a disability bringing in emotional support dog. That was a pet-friendly apartment building. I think they were doing that. I haven't heard that got tossed out. That's another good question. I've got to research again. Cheapers, you people. Make my life easier. Ask yes and no questions that I know. I hope they understand my sense of humor.
Yeah. That's it for right now.
Okay. Hey, we're back to the quiz questions. You know what that means? We're getting close to the end. What does this tell you? Well, I hope after about the third slide, you know that D is not correct because only dogs and miniature horses have ADA protection. C is obviously out. Highly train a cat? You can't even train a cat. That leaves us down to A and B, and I'm going along with B. If that owner really believes he's got a service cat, owner needs training. Now the second two questions, I put both pictures up there. We got a service dog with it's a dog with a vest that says service dog, dog with a vest that says emotional support. In my humble opinion, B is the correct answer. All that tells you is that the owner bought a vest for the dog. There are those things out on the internet that you can go out, fill out a little questionnaire, and you can get whatever you want to say whatever you want it to say. And here's something that comes right out of an FAQ from the ADA. Does the ADA require service animals be certified as service animals? No. Covered entities may not require documentation such as proof that the animal has been certified, trained, or licensed as a service animal as a condition for entry. And then in bold print they added, there are individuals and organizations that sell service animal certification and registration documents online. These documents do not convey any rights under the ADA, and the Department of Justice does not recognize them as proof that the dog is a service animal. How much time have we got? Okay. That is the end of what I've got. And if somebody wants to look at some of that online stuff, I got a couple more slides hiding about that. There is my contact information. Kylie, have we got more questions?
Yes. So you can charge for the setup fees for poo prints?
I think so. I need to contact that person that told me about that and see if that's been challenged. I think you can. You people got to quit asking good questions. I hope you understand my weird sense of humor. What else have you got?
Let's see. Does the leash law apply to a pet who is outside on the patio of an apartment if care and control are present?
The patio of the apartment. Now, I'm assuming that is just the patio area for that apartment, I think that on that space, that would be viewed as part of the apartment. But if the dog is out on the patio and just tears off across the yard, now we're not care and control. Care and control is everywhere. Did that answer the question?
What kind of services will a miniature horse provide for someone?
Oh, I like that one. Some people have balance issues, and that miniature horse is a little bit bigger, a little stronger than a lot of dogs, and can provide balance for someone. I think there are some miniature horses that can do some guide type services. And the neat thing about the miniature horse, they live longer than dogs, so they last longer. What else, Kylie?
That is all I have.
Well, if anybody got or requested these slides, here are a couple slides you didn't get. There's a place out on the internet called Therapy Pet, and here's one of their ads that they have. Why get an ESA letter? No more unfair pet deposits. And yeah, you can see where they're going with this one. I went out to Therapy Pet and I went through their questionnaire, and I qualified. See, here's another. This is U.S. service dog registration. Boy, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? It doesn't mean a thing. And here is from Therapy Pet, quickly and easily see if you qualify. So I went through that, and I got this one. Congratulations, it appears you may qualify. Select what type of letter. For $150, you get a letter that is for housing. For $150, you get a letter for travel. And for $200, you can get both. Yeah. And there's questions going on in it. Do you really think that anybody won't qualify for these things? Other questions, Kylie?
Excuse me, is a person able to keep a miniature horse inside in an apartment?
If they can demonstrate that that is a service animal, the answer is yes. Because service animal, that falls under ADA and also fair housing. Comes right back to care and control. If the horse causes damage, can you charge for it? Yes, you can. Anything else?
I do not have any questions on this end.
How long were we supposed to go today?
2:30. So look at that.
Oh man. We had a good crowd. They timed it very well. And now, of course, if we could hear, there'd be thunderous applause, wouldn't there?
Yes.
Yes. You poor people. Put up with me for an hour. You see my email address there? You can send me questions, and as you've already seen, if I don't know, I'll be honest and tell you that I don't know. High Plains Fair Housing in Grand Forks, excellent, excellent resource. What else do we need to do, Kylie?
I think that's it. You got a lot of thank yous on the chat, so.
Oh, those poor people.
Will there be a frequently asked question? I'm not sure
Well,
if they're wanting a page or. I have all the questions typed up on my end if we.
okay. There are some pages of FAQs in both ADA and fair housing. I can send you some links to those if you would like to put them up somewhere for people.
Okay. Can the answers to questions he is researching be sent out to all?
Depends upon how long they want to wait. That wasn't a nice answer at all, this, was it?
I suppose once you get them, we can always send them out.
Yeah, we'll send them out to the emails that everybody provided when they registered.
And some of those questions, I'm not sure I'm going to find an answer, but I'll give it my best shot.
So, all right, I think that's it.
Everybody, thanks for showing up. And this is a group that asks some very, very good questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jerry.
You are welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
If anybody needs certificates, please contact Marilyn, send her an email. And then we hope that you're able to join us for the next 3 trainings. We've got fair housing next week, reasonable accommodations and modifications the following Tuesday, and the North Dakota Safety Council will be the 4th Tuesday of the month. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Adios, everybody.